Hi everybody and welcome to Cope with Hope. Today I'm going to be interviewing a wonderful human being. He's very kind and he is a thorough gentleman. He used to host our shows way back when, and I always remember when Brian walked into the room, there was like a quiet, happy peace that came with him. I've never seen him lose his cool. Everybody I talk to about him only has nice things to say. I mean, even now, if we meet somewhere and I'm talking to him, he pays attention. He's not the kind of person who'll meet you at a party and is more interested in meeting the rest of the crowd. He's a very respectful and very kind, very adjusting human being. I asked my friend Sharmila, I said, hey, you remember Brian? And she said, of course I do. And she used to do fashion shows as well. In fact, she used to choreograph them. And he used to host the shows that she organized. And she had wonderful things to say about him. And it matched the same thing that I felt, that Brian is a thorough gentleman. And he's very, very adjusting. And people like that are rare in this world. So I was thinking, who else may I interview this weekend? And yeah, he came to mind and he so very kindly said yes. So without more talking, I'm going to add him on and let's see what he has to say about how he's spending his time. And maybe, just maybe, he let us on in a few secrets about what makes him this wonderful human being that he is. So let me get Brian on. Yeah, waiting for him. I don't know if you saw, we had a trial run before, which was quite cute, I think. Hi, Brian.
Hey, Nandinii, how are you?
I'm very good.
I tuned in a little earlier and I heard your introduction. Hey, you know what? You're doing my ego a lot of damage.
No, it's true. This is what we feel about you. We can't help it.
Thank you so much. I'm flattered. I hope I haven't turned pink in the cheeks.
A little bit.
A
I
little
think
bit.
red, a blush, a nice blush, rose blush.
How are you doing, Nandinii?
I'm doing really well. I'm so grateful for Cope with Hope. And so let me start off with this. About 2.5 weeks ago, my sister sent this quote to me and it had been floating around. And it goes like this, because I want you to talk a little bit about it. And once the storm is over, you won't remember how you made it through, how you managed to survive. You won't even be sure, in fact, whether the storm is really over. But one thing is certain, when you come out of the storm, you won't be the same person who walked in. That's what the storm is all about. Haruki Murakami, who's one of my favorite authors. And I thought about this and I said, yeah, actually the whole world is going through this storm. And what can I do in my small little capacity that might bring a little bit of happiness to some people's hearts? And I thought, okay, fine, let me talk to people from all walks of life and ask them that, hey, we're all in a storm together, but we all have our different boats and we all use our different oars that we have put together to go through it. And then I spoke to my daughter, Tasha, and she says, actually, Mama, that's how people even live life, except right now it's more magnified. Everybody is in their own little boats going through life in their own way. And I said, okay, I'd like to bring another word into that, and that is hope. Because for me, hope is always onward leading. So Brian, I'd like to ask you what you've been doing at this time of lockdown. And then we'll talk about other times as well.
Okay. So to begin with, and I must add happily, like the rest of us, I've been locked up at home. And I say this with a reasonable element of happiness because I think one of the challenges I faced, I think self-imposed challenge was spending time with Charmaine. And by default, and I must add happily by default, Charmaine and me are hanging out together. And I'm figuring out exactly what I've missed out on over the last swatch of time, but that's a happy regret now because we're spending a lot of quality time together, and that's a big thing, right? I'm also, obviously we're all working from home, so
Yes.
I don't want to make it sound like we've all got our feet up and we're chilling. No,
Yes.
we're busy working, as you are aware, along with a few other co-founders, we run an organization, and every
Yes.
one of us is working really hard at keeping it relevant and keeping it afloat, and
Yes.
and the likes. So work from home. So there's a whole bunch of, you want to call them meetings, telephone calls, webinars. I think webinar is the new
Yeah.
is the I'm
New
trying not to
norm.
say new normal. I'm trying not to say. There are a few words that I promised
Yeah.
myself I'll use as minimally as possible. New normal is
Yes.
one, and unprecedented is the other. But having said that,
Yes. Yes.
so one is busy, doing what one does regularly. But
Yes.
I think there's a beautiful balance, between work and personal life that has been, I think, imposed on us by default. It's a question of actually embracing it, and I
Yes.
am quite happily. I'm involved. I was useless at home chores, and allow me to be brutally honest, and I'm still pretty useless. I do end up doing a little bit of the washing and stuff.
Okay.
Fortunately, I have an incredible person who made the mistake of marrying me many years ago, and she's phenomenal at home. So I'm a happy camper. It not hurts to say
Okay.
it. A bit of physical, how should I say, exercising. A
Yes.
bit of that in the day. A little bit of mental exercising as well, because like most of us, again, I'm sure we're all spending a lot of time introspecting,
Yes.
kind of thinking things through, hopefully positively and not negatively. I'm doing a bit of reading, and I was someone who enjoyed reading from from digital kind of, like your iMac, your Mac, or
Yeah.
your
Kindle and
tablet.
things.
And I'm not a Kindle person.
Yeah.
I do a bit of reading, obviously, researching a little bit, but I have a few books that were home. Most of my books are unfortunately in the office, but a little bit of reading. I much prefer reading from a book. Thanks to my son who prodded me, Bradley, who prodded me, in the right direction. I'm now consuming a bit of Amazon and Netflix. I was again completely
Okay.
useless at that, but there again, I'm enjoying some of the content on these two platforms,
Okay.
watching some really good stuff actually, and I'm glad for what I did. So that primarily makes, kind of constitutes the day.
That you
But
have.
the amazing thing is it's been a happy, whatever, 50, 55 days. Uh, if you'd asked me this 2.5 months ago, would you be able to spend 60 days at home? Uh, I wouldn't have
No.
answered. I'd have just slipped my wrists. But I've got to say that you live and learn,
Yeah.
and like I said, I'm pretty happy with the way the last 55, 60 days have gone, and like the rest of the world, I hope it doesn't last for a lifetime, and we're all
Yeah.
hoping that there will be that proverbial turnaround. But
Yes.
yeah, that's what my day looks like, or the week looks like.
Lovely. So part of your 55 days has been like a prolonged honeymoon. Part of it has been about learning how to be online more and communicate work-wise. Your son has changed you into watching a little bit of couch potato stuff,
True.
and you're exercising mentally and physically.
Yeah, if I might add, those were the physical things I'm doing, but I think mentally, I think there's a great balance being drawn between what I used to do
Yes.
and what I now believe I need to be doing. One doesn't
Yes.
replace the other, but I think it's about drawing a balance between the way I lived life and the way I'd like to live life in the going forward. Blame it on self-realization, blame it on values being balanced, and the rest of it. So nice. It's a nice balance here. It now has to be translated, which is always my challenge. The intent may be in the right place. It's actually fulfilling that intent, which
Yeah.
is the challenge going forward. But yeah.
Okay, so now I'm going to do an ulta.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. I love to look at life upside down and do things the wrong way around. So since you've talked about what you are doing and what you should be doing, can you tell us a little bit about what you should be doing and how you're going to embrace it?
Yeah. So we've, like most of my friends and buddies and business partners, we've been spending a large part of our lives in the professional world, and it has left very little time to pursue what we do in the personal world.
Yes.
Now, I'm not, I just don't want to make it sound overly emotional and say, spend more time with the lady in your life or your kids or whatever.
Yeah.
Yes, that of course. But it's also about spending a little more time doing what you're passionate about individually. And
Yes.
I've realized a fair few things quite by default, actually. For instance, there's something called Tellis Like It Is, where pretty much like you're doing, I just felt that there was, how do I say this, way too much negativity and sensationalism around us. So, I thought I'd talk to a few of the friends I know or the people I know who are personalities, and not just me get to know them a little better, but whoever else wants to tune in and take a look at who the person behind the personality, so to speak.
Yes.
From a happy perspective, because we tend to know people for what they've achieved in the material world.
This outside part. Yeah.
That's right. But sometimes, there are great stories that lay under that personality. And so it's an endeavor. And that's something I started, and purely coincidentally, during the last 40 odd days, those little episodes have been seeing the light of day. And I've been doing some thinking on that and figuring out, in the going forward, how can I give that additional life?
Yes.
And a few other things like podcasting and stuff that I am teased everywhere about and it's a fact, about my complete ignorance, not complete, but fair ignorance of technology. And
I think it's very cute, Brian. I wanted to give you a big hug when you sent the message that, can we do a trial run? I said, I love this man. And yes, we'll do it now.
Yeah. It's a joke. It's a joke. It's a fun thing at work as well.
It's too lovely.
About me and my incredible knowledge about technology. Hey, I don't do too badly.
You do very well, okay?
I'm not going to pretend either. So coming back to your question of what I'd like to do going forward, of course, the professional side of me hopefully will stay relevant, and I'll continue to do a bit of that. But I've promised myself that I will draw a balance between that and what else floats my boat on the personal front.
Absolutely.
Be it from a family or emotional side of me, or be it from a passion side of me. Stuff that I've always enjoyed doing in my growing up years. Find a little more time to do it. Find kind of today's versions of what I love doing. So it's been fun.
Nourishing the self, nourishing me. I think it's a very, very important thing which many of us overlook. And once you nourish you, then it's easy to, on that level, it's not an emotional wacky thing. It's the truth. You nourish yourself and you give you the best version of yourself out there to your loved ones, to at work, everywhere. I'm so happy you're doing this.
Just getting it done is a fun thing.
It is. You rediscover loving yourself if you want to be really soppy. But it's true. Like how you rediscovered spending time with Charmaine is amazing. And you're on a kind of prolonged honeymoon. I think that's damn cute.
It's fun. I don't want to melodramatize it. But we're just spending time. We're having real chats all the time. And I don't know about honeymoon, but yeah.
A honeymoon has different meanings for different people, okay?
No. Yeah, okay. I rest my case.
Okay, that's lovely. Now, I know music is something that's really important to you, and that musical theatre is something even more important to you. I'd like to ask you, Brian, how you got into music, what inspired you, and then a little bit about your musical theatre relationship.
Okay, so I am and was privileged to be, to grow up in this pretty beautiful suburb, Bandra, and we have a system that I never fail to acknowledge, called the zonals. I mean, that's the easy way to say it, but to just quickly describe it, it's a system that helps you partake and discover yourself in the world of the performing arts. It's amateur. It has no claims to be professional, but my goodness, does it do Does it do people good? So it's just quite simply run by the local churches, and we've developed a system that's an all-bandra system where various age groups, people from various age groups indulge themselves in singing, in playing musical instruments in a competitive kind of environment, duets, quartets, choirs, theater, and the likes. We've started dance and a few other things. So it's a beautiful little community development exercise that uses the engagement mediums of the performing arts. So long story short, that's really where, and all of us, you're never given an option. You're just put up on that stage and, and you're happily told to sing.
So I'm not giving you an option right now. I'm happily telling you to sing. Any of it, and then we'll continue with this. Anything that's the closest to your heart.
Are you kidding me?
No. I told you there's going to be a surprise.
So you didn't tell me the surprise was on me.
No, of course. What do you think? Am I interviewing someone else?
Okay, for now, I'll say, stuck on you. I got this feeling down deep in my soul that I just can't lose. Yes, I'm on my way. Is that okay?
No, that's not long enough.
Glad I stayed. I don't have any accompaniment, and I can play only 3 chords on a guitar, so I'm not going to attempt it.
Okay.
But yeah,
so that was good.
We grew up on that stage, and
somebody wants dancing in the dark.
There's a fun story behind that. There were 3 or 4 songs that I really loved, and one of them, I should be saying present continuous, that I really love. And one of them is Dancing in the Dark. And if I got half an opportunity to sing that song, I sang. So
sing 2 lines. Now.
About 10 years ago, no, I won't. I'll get killed. You don't even know. So
who will kill you? Who will kill you?
Everyone will. No, that's a joke. So 10 years ago, I was banned from singing in a fun way, banned from singing 3 songs.
Okay, tell me.
Dancing in the Dark was one of them. It's really funny because, and they were very well justified in banning me from singing it because, I'm one of those lazy boys. Sing a song and I'll go, Dancing in the Dark or the other 2 songs that I love. But
which are the other 2?
No, so there were about 3 or 4. So Summer of '69 was, I know the other song, and there was one more, it's escaping me at the moment. But there were 3 or 4 songs that I ended up singing all the time, and so that's the story. But yeah, so the Zorro stage kind of, how should I say, kind of exposed us to the performing arts, primarily music, a bit of theater, 1-act theater that still exists in that system. And that's what exposed us to not just the performing arts, but actually to organizational skills as well. And if I certainly am doing what I'm doing for a living today, one has to recognize and be grateful for that opportunity, because it helped us come together as people, organize things together, and that sowed the seed, so to speak, of what we do professionally today. So that's what kind of sowed the seed for music in me. And then, of course, one thing led to another. I'll never forget. I think it was, I'm going to give away the fact that I'm a geriatric, but I think it was back in '79 when we did a musical called Joseph and His Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Jacob and Sons.
Yeah, that's
Joseph
right.
was his favorite one.
Not bad. Not bad.
Joseph's coat was elegant, the cut was fine. The tasteful something and something design.
You missed your profession as well. You missed your profession. So yeah, I was one of the brothers, and this was back in '79, like I said.
And who is Joseph?
Joseph is this guy Andrew who lives in the US. My goodness, what a voice! And there's a great narrator's part as well, which another friend who's in the US, Victor, did. We were the spare parts. We were the brothers, and we had a song each. A beautiful song called "One More Angel in Heaven." The ballad.
And you won't sing one line from that?
There's one more angel in heaven. There's one more star in the sky. 2 lines.
Yeah, I love it.
Even I love the music.
Yeah.
It was,
I saw it in London. I just loved it. I wept through the whole thing. I just loved it.
It was re-released recently, and we all watched it about a month ago, I think it was, and just soaked it in yet again, many decades later. But yeah, so
Yeah.
Josephine is amazing. Technicolor Dreamcoat happened, and then the zonals continued to happen. And then I got fortunate. I got noticed on one of the zonal stages and got pulled to do a role, a narrator's role in Greece. I don't know if you
Oh,
remember.
lovely.
Yeah, it featured Shamak and Sangeeta as
Yes,
Sandy and
I
Danny,
remember.
and I played the narrator there. Then Evita,
Yes.
the second version of Evita happened with Alec.
Okay.
So
I saw the first version.
with Keith Stevenson. So I
Yes, yes.
replaced Keith as Perron
Okay.
in Evita, what they called Evita 2 at that time.
Yeah.
And there were a few others that happened. We used to do a lot of stuff, and I must say this, thanks to people like friends like Joe Cordo and Celeste. We did musicals here locally in Bandra. We did Annie, the wonderful music.
Oh,
Yeah, we did Witness.
yeah.
In fact, some of our dear friends who are still very dear friends, and some of whom are in on today's chat. I noticed Coco and Neil and the whole gang. They were all serious actors and singers that took part in all these musicals
Oh,
that were
how
performed in
lovely.
Bandra. Yeah, and we've stayed friends, which is testimony to the wonderful ramifications, if you want, of doing community theater and doing musicals together. So all of that happened on the side as well. I shouldn't be saying on the side. That was a kind of nucleus of our lives at that time.
Yes.
So we've lived that journey in music, in theater, in the performing arts, and happily still kind of have little bits and pieces. I went back recently, not recently, but about 4.5 to 5 years ago, and we did Beauty and the Beast.
Yes. Oh,
Disney.
that was
Yeah,
brilliant.
yeah, it was really lovely. It was
Yeah.
really lovely. And then, of course, a couple of years ago, we did a ground up musical called Sing India Sing, which was written locally, written
Can't you
by.
sing something from Beauty and the Beast?
No,
That's easy.
no, stop bullying me now.
Okay,
Stop
now
bullying me.
I promise you, I won't make you sing.
Yeah, so I've been really fortunate to be able to indulge or re-indulge, should I say, in stuff that really excites me, stuff that I'm passionate about. Yeah, so that's the musicals and the musical theater journey,
Okay.
and I hope it continues.
What does hope mean to you? Hope mean for Brian Tellis. The word hope.
Yep, I mean, hope means being optimistic. Hope means understanding that there is a plus side to everything. Hope means dwelling on positivity, or those are triggers around hope.
Yeah.
Hope's a very generic word, rather.
Yes.
And I've spent a fair amount of time, I must admit to you, I mean, maybe not coined as hope, but I spend a fair amount of time when I introspect, dwelling on optimism, dwelling on, to use another cliche that I'm blamed for using too often, looking at the half full rather than the half empty.
Yes.
Which I
Yes.
think is one of the key things that has helped me. So hope to me is optimism. Hope, I must admit that I am actually a victim of overthinking. Blame it on, I don't know what to blame it on, but I overthink. I used to overthink a lot more than I hope I overthink now. But I used to overthink, and it beyond the point, it doesn't work for anyone. It certainly doesn't work for me, because then that leads to stress, and stress leads to various other manifestations that are not very happy. And I'm a classic case. So hope to me is optimism. Hope to me is positivity. Being able to focus on it. It's said that there is no success without failures. So when there are failures or stressful moments, one has to understand, A, all things must pass. B is, I think if you overcome challenges, it leads to bigger things.
Yes.
My mind goes back to old cliched sayings that said, I saw a man who had no, I felt bad that I had no shoes till I saw a man who had no feet. It teaches you to be optimistic and to be positive. My dad would always say something to me, which he didn't say it in these words, but he used to insinuate it and say, be good to people on the way up. They are the same people you'll meet on the way down. These are just things that kind of remind you about optimism, about staying positive, about the half full versus the half empty. Hey, I don't want to sound like a preacher man. It's one thing to say these things. It's quite another thing to live it.
Absolutely.
In fact, I was chatting recently, a few days ago, with a really dear friend of mine about how I still am a victim of overthinking.
Yes.
And so it's an everyday challenge that one has to kind of work towards, and I'm right there. But I'm quite clear what I want to get out of life, through hoping and through working towards, achieving it positively.
Yeah, very, very beautifully said. Host. I met you while you used to, in those days we used to say compare, now we say host. When you were hosting our fashion shows, where has that fit into your journey?
That's played a really large part in my journey. I've had the most warped professional career up until we co-founded, Neil, Otis, and me co-founded Fountainhead, and we're still very happy partners. And but the other before that, my career was really funny and kind of warped. The one thing that held it together, my life together, were the performing arts, and anchoring or hosting was something that was, so the zonal system again taught you how to speak, taught you how to enjoy the lights and be confident about who you are and how and what you say. I mean, now I'm thinking about it. At that time, we were just indulging ourselves. We were not thinking so deeply. We enjoyed the lights. You soaked in it. That was it. End of story. But I think that led to theater, and then theater led to recognizing the fact that one could be reasonably, if not very, expressive about how you say things. And you said it in the introduction. I used to host a lot of shows in the corporate world. I was an airline person, and there were a few things that I used to host. And then I think it was Shams only, Sharmila, and Sharmila and Hemant would do a lot of the fashion shows back then, along with Shanti Chopra and Sangu and, the rest of the gang. And I got a call saying, would you like to host, a fashion show? Of course, that was not with you on stage. I wasn't as pretty as the rest of you who were on stage. So I was chucked behind the sound console. Would you anchor? And I said, yeah. And, there was Errol Sequeira, I'm sure you remember.
Yes,
who was,
I do.
The voice of God, the very popular voice of God at that time. And so that's how it started, like you said, and one thing led to another. And that kind of hosting actually became a part of my life. The introductions, whether it was of designers or whether it was of the collection that was about to show itself or was showing itself on the ramp and things like that. And one thing helped the other. And then I think it was in 93, early 93 or middle 93, when radio was due to start. And people knew that I was fond of music because we had an acoustic band at that time that did, kind of harmony takes, soft harmony takes on various bands. And people knew that, I was comfortable with music and that I spoke too much for my age and size any which way. And they thought maybe it would be a good combination to put me on air. And so I got really fortunate. I mean, obviously I had never done any radio before. It didn't exist in the FM avatar at that time or until that time. And that was the start of my radio kind of hosting. And then one thing led to another. Obviously, one feeds the other. So radio has been a really happy journey, as has hosting as well. And really, that's where, that's how they say, you keep the fire burning. You do things that you completely enjoy in the first place, and it kind of keeps you going, in a manner of speak, and then some. So it's been, it's not been a charted journey, to be brutally honest, Nandinii. It's one thing's just happened, and it's about staying passionate. It's about, and I've got a story to tell about that as well. But that really is the story behind the anchoring or the hosting or whatever you want to call it. And I still do some.
You still do some hosting?
I do, but very, very minimal.
Okay. So what is Brian Tellis's mantra of living? What is it that keeps you ticking? What is it that keeps you going during this time of lockdown and at any time of life? And what is your mantra, or what are your mantras for living?
Yeah, again, this is something about 10 years ago. I had how do I say this right? I had a life-changing experience. I had to get a fistula done. This was 2010, I think. I had to get a fistula done, went to the doctors, and they said, we'll do it, no big deal. I have a few doctor friends, dear friends, and it was going to be done on general anesthesia. So they did some, x-rays and stuff, and they called me and told me that we don't have very good news for you. You've got a massive tumor on your lung, and we're going to have to kind of check it out. Obviously, the fear was cancer, and they did an aspiration straight away and sent it for a biopsy. And those 6 days between the time they did that and the time I received the reports was life-changing for me. It came out benign by the grace of God, and then they had to open me up and take it out, and I stay clear as of now. But it changed my life. It kind of gave me another perspective, and I really decided to chase. It's going to sound a bit gyannish, Nandinii, but
we want your gyan, please.
No, I decided to chase happiness. I don't know how else to say it. The simplest way of saying it is, I decided to chase happiness. I've spent a lot of time figuring out what makes me happy, and I've decided to spend all of my life. 10 years ago, I made this decision to be happy. And then in the process, I set myself, if you can call that a mantra, I set myself 10 ways that I could do it, and these 10 points, these 10 points I keep revisiting on a daily, weekly, I don't know, basis. I keep revisiting them every twice in a while to make sure that I'm on course. And I've got it jotted down. I carry it with me wherever I go.
Are we allowed to know? Are we allowed to know?
Yeah, no rocket science. No rocket science. I mean, I can say it out. So
please share it.
Okay. Okay, you asked for it. Don't blame me now. Okay.
No. I want to know. This is why I do Cope with Hope. Yeah.
No, so I figured with me, I'm very passion driven. So the first point that I kind of reflect very often is I go on a discovery. Even during these last 50 days, like I told you earlier, I set myself down. I spend that look in the mirror time, look inside yourself time, and go on a discovery, or if you want to call it a rediscovery of who I am and what makes me happy. And it's amazing sometimes how realization or additional realization dawns. And so I do this all the time, including this morning. I spent a little time, a me time, if you want to call it that, just kind of looking in and figuring out. So go on a discovery of yourself is the first point that I do as often as I possibly can. I think another important point that I didn't in the interim years spend enough time doing was making time for my passions. And whatever your passion is, I think we owe it to ourselves to make a little time. It may be once a day, it may be once a week, depending on what that passion is and how much it demands of you. But you have to make that time to chase your passion.
Yes.
There is passion and there is profession, and if you can make your profession out of your passion. Which I think we feel privileged about. I mean, pretty much what we do for a living is coming out of our passion. So we kind of serve a dual purpose there. But make time for your passions, irrespective of which slot you fall into. Like we discussed earlier, chase positivity. Easier said than done. Because we're humans, man. We tend to, and it's difficult. It is difficult because
absolutely
there are two sides to everything. And while must one be aware of the half empty and why, I think if you focus on the half full and try and kind of fill it further, be a lot more positive, I think things work. It's worked for me for sure. So chase positivity, define the terms on which you want to live life. I think that's a key.
It's very important.
Yeah, because very often I was very confused. So, I think you need to define the terms on which you individually want to live life on. What are your priorities? And that also can get redefined, like we discussed earlier in our conversation. It's learning. So define the terms. I must, again, give credit to my father. He used to, again, not eloquently, but he'd always say, my academics were never my go-to thing. And very often it manifests in the results. Okay. And there was an incident that I don't know if you have the luxury of that time, but there was an incident that was a turning point when I was in my SSE. And I decided after that, and a conversation post that, he'd always say, be a student of life. So he says there's, he used to always say there's one way of learning, which is the, the typical academic way, the degree way and whatever, which is very important and good, but you can learn from life itself. Whether it's from
Yes.
the house help, or whether it's the driver, or whether it's your colleague at work, or whether it is,
Yes. Yes.
hold on to those people, hold on to what they say, because that is not curated conversations. Those are real conversations
Yes.
and could lead to heightened learning. So be a student of life and be a student for life. He used to always say that the moment you think you've arrived or you know everything, you're actually going south.
Yes.
So those are two things I hold on to, being a student for life and off life. Another thing that can become an accusation or can become an asset, is staying hungry. Of course, you have to find the line that defines need from greed
Yes.
when you say stay hungry. And of course, draw balance, like I said earlier. But I love staying hungry, and it's hunger. It's hunger to learn more. It's hunger to achieve more. And
Yes.
sometimes achievement, is you spend too much time on trying to achieve things which come in the way of being happy. So I mean, that's a decision that you have to make, right? But
Yes.
by and large, to stay hungry to learn, be it for selfish or selfless reasons. I think that's another mantra.
Yes.
Set your value chain, like I said. Define the terms you want to live life. Set your value chain is very important.
Yes.
And I've gone through many changes in life on that value chain. I mean, I've
Same
got to be
here.
brutally honest and admit
Yeah.
that sometimes you chase what now seem all the wrong things.
Yes.
I have no regret, but but I have learned that, and it's never too late to learn and change. So yeah, I mean, set your value chain, know the difference. And the most important thing, I think now, and I think these things dawn on you only in the latter part of your life, is enjoy the journey. I mean,
Yes.
the destination always changes, gets redefined, either by you or by the world around
Absolutely.
you or whatever. So
Yeah.
it's about living in the
Yeah.
moment. It's about enjoying the journey. It's about living each day for what it is. And I must admit, easier said than done. Okay, these are things
Yes.
that I think require everyday focus and everyday thought process.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, these are
Absolutely.
the 10 kind of, if you want, thoughts that I lean on to kind of keep me happy. And it's
Yes.
work in progress, huh? Nandini, I don't want to sound like I've been
Yes.
there. It's work in progress.
No. No. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So my speech for
Just
the early evening is over now.
no. I mean, you've
Unless you
given
have
us a
some
lot
more.
of
No, tell me.
you've given us a lot of amazing things to think about. Really, I'm very, very grateful for this. I knew it would be fantastic.
It's been fun
Any
chatting. Yeah, sorry,
Yeah,
go ahead.
I think it has been fun chatting. And somebody asked me, I'm very scared now. What are we going to talk about? I said, don't be. It's just a connection of the heart. Uh,
Yeah, it
that's
is.
what Cope with Hope is all about. It's that, and you've shared some very deep points with us and very relevant about your personal life. And thank you so much because
You're welcome.
it's not easy to be vulnerable in front of everybody. So I really, really appreciate that. Thank you. Any other last words of any wisdom or any insights you'd like to talk about?
Yeah. Well, it's, I was chatting with someone on Tellis like it is, and I must admit, I owe this line to him. And we were talking about just what you were talking about what the journey of, happiness and, what does it take? And he said something beautiful to me. He said, it's simple to be happy, but it's not easy to be simple. And he left me
Oh,
with some incredible
yes.
food for thought. I mean, it's simple to be happy, but it's not very easy to be simple because we're people of the world. I mean, we tend to
Yeah.
get influenced. So he was saying, he was insinuating or saying what is a truism that we really need to focus on who we are and what we wish to be rather than let society decide who we should be.
Yes.
I mean, really look inside, figure who and what you want to be and work towards that rather than trying to fulfill societal norms. Again, to say these things is one thing and to live by it is quite another thing. Understanding life, its purpose. There's a great John Lennon story again, which I repeatedly say, and
Please tell us.
Apparently his mother. Yeah, no, it's a quick thing, but his mother apparently used to tell him. It's manifested itself in various memes and stuff, but it's a really lovely thing where apparently his mother would always tell him, John, when you grow up, you must be happy. And apparently, story goes that one of his teachers in the early years asked him, so John, what do you want to be when you grow up? And he said, ma'am, I wish to be happy. And she said, I don't think you've understood the question. And he said, ma'am, I don't think you've understood life. You know, and